Following those many battles against Morgoth, the War of Wrath brought an end to his reign of terror in Middle-earth, and the powers of the West, Valar, rewarded the men who stayed true to the Elves and who suffered greatly themselves. Their reward was a land made for them to dwell in.
Good trip. Let's see what we're doing next. You find me at the National Museum of Scotland. Just at the very entrance. This is a special place to me. I used to go here quite often. It's rather strange being here. I've not been back for about a decade. I started coming here about 2010, 2011. At most, I most associate it with the period between 2012 and 2013, just before I moved. Got a lot of interesting photographs and videos. I remember wearing a tunic at one point here. I'll show some photos hopefully. One of my main goals is to find the Grantown Picture Stone, which I wrote about in an essay, Just Save Perception, for the Earth Tongues blog. A very important artefact for me. So let's go and explore. Giant deer sculpture, one of the inspirations for the enigmatic mythical being Satruna in our Sartoris fantasy narrative, shared narrative. Megaloceros giganteus. It's interesting, all of the very well made, very well constructed taxidermy specimens over there, very moving to see, even when still. But I'm always just, it's always very moving as well, just even the smallest specimens. I'm not quite sure how to relate it or express it, but whenever I review art books, I always say there's a kind of a aesthetic overload. And when you see butterflies and beetles like these here, and bees, cicadas, I don't know, even just the smallest little plate here with maybe about 7 or so specimens are always very, very pleasing to look at. Brings up certain feelings. Often when I go to museums, a lot of the time I don't necessarily read the interpretation. I almost prefer to just kind of soak in the atmosphere. It's an interesting thing because I remember in the Oxford Natural History Museum speaking to a lecturer. It was just me and him at one point. We were just walking around. I remember saying something to the effect of, museums are kind of one of the last bastions of, well, I didn't frame it in this way at the time, but of worldliness. The sense, it's a strange feeling, of course, when you come here, a single building and people are connecting with the past and with nature. Admittedly, I find myself mostly drawn to things that I remember from previous visits. I remember my twin was drawn to the snake on Asclepios' staff. And these sculptures here are just fantastic. Ganymede and the eagle. It's one of those interesting things where you can go to Rome and see the Vatican museums, which are just astounding, beyond words. But then, sculptures like these, they never get tiresome. Hercules and Antaeus, it's actually a callback to one of the sculptures at Stowe Gardens, if you've seen that video. And the story of Adam and Eve. The aesthetic here, I love this kind of relief sculptures. That sense of antiquity. The very ornate style here. Just trying to find my way around this rather complicated museum and found something a little close to home. Some muffs collected by Scottish entomologist Alice Balfour, East Lothian, in the 1800s. Rather pertinent to a story I'm currently writing, which takes place at Yellowcraig Beach. It involves a father sweet netting a small blue butterfly. All these little notes here. You can just about see the species names. Okay, well, after some struggle, I managed to find the Scottish section of the museum. I think I might explore these newer stages of Scotland's history, first of all, before going down there where the arrow is to the early peoples, the beginnings. It's much nicer here, I much prefer it here. St Andrew. And we're already into the Pictish carvings. Contrast between the modern and the old. So I've just gone well underground now, and we're in the early peoples section of the Scottish exhibit. This is the place I remember most of all. Earlier I did say that it was primarily for the Mesolithic and deep prehistory, but in fact it includes I believe it goes from early medieval to Bronze Age, or to the Iron Age, and then the Bronze Age, and then deeper into the Mesolithic and so forth, the Neolithic and then the Mesolithic. So I'm not entirely sure if the Grantown picture stone is here. I think it is, but what's caught my eye here is that there are some findings from Traprain Law, which is the seat of the Votadini, major Iron Age tribe, which I will be visiting soon in this video. Various axe heads and necklaces and brooches. Oh, this is a strange feeling, if I'm being honest. I've not been here for just over a decade now, and I'm remembering all of these carvings. Number 7. Practice pieces. It's fascinating how just these little fragments can mean so much. There's casting implements. I remember the bronze sword here. Interestingly, I think that's changed position. Casting bronze. It's a strange thing just to think that it makes me think that I hadn't even been to Butser Ancient Farm at this point, where I got to see some of the bronze casting procedure. And obviously that's just one tiny example, of course. I had not done it's a strange thing, 'cause I feel like my life kind of really began strangely after Scotland, although it was it took venturing up into the Highlands and really getting to grips with places like this and learning about the history of Scotland and prehistory and so forth, to feel comfortable with making that move to England and being sure that I wanted to volunteer at places like Butser Ancient Farm and so forth. I definitely much prefer places like this, quiet and cool. So yeah, I think we will be seeing the Grantown picture stone very soon, in fact. Fragments like these are just fascinating. I'm reminded of a song lyric from Blind Guardian. It's bits and pieces we walk through. It's fascinating. We had some early Christian influence over there, and some Roman influence here, and then some flint knapping. Antler hammer. It's a strange thing that a single museum would take weeks to really absorb. You just can't see it all. And there it is, the Grantown picture stack. That is really quite something. It's perhaps the most significant historical or prehistoric historical artifact that I can really think of. It symbolises so much. I believe it was one of the banner images on oakenwise.com And now, staring at this, looking at this, very strange that I just wrote about the significance of this particular carving, and now I'm standing in front of it not too long after. I find more than any other carving here, actually it stands out. This fully fleshed out carving of a deer, the vitality kind of locked into it, it feels alive. Images of wild creatures, the hunter's prey, appear on carved stones. Although stylized, this image of a red deer stag shows the artist possessed a hunter's understanding of the animal's anatomy. I would say that the fact that it's stylized is, well, it doesn't need to be. It's more vivid and more vital because it's stylized. Quite a special moment, in fact. I was wondering when I would see these picture stones here. I wasn't actually sure if this was the building, the room rather, because it was obscured by these rather ugly white blocks. So as I turned round from looking at the sacred iron exhibit, I turned round and seen these. I was about to say, I hope I can see these stones before I leave. And I'm here. I remember taking photos here as well. Glimpses of the sacred, powerful symbols, enigmatic symbols. It's funny just how relatively new these things are, being Pictish, of course, AD 1000, and yet they're so, they seem like they're from deep prehistory. How strange these symbols are. I particularly love this this symbol, this carving of a boar. It reminds me of the boar. For some reason I'm forgetting his name. Okoto, Lord Okoto. This paired with the Grantown Pictish stag. Just these things, these creatures, these beings informed Sartoris and informed so much of what we sort of love and appreciate. The strength in that carving there. Surreal. I think even more so than the Pictish stone, it's these exhibitions that really inspired me as I was to leave Scotland and study wildlife ecology for 5 years, the history of the forests. I always remember being most inspired by the Mesolithic. And there we are. This is all still the same. Lowland oak forest. I got goosebumps admittedly. I have just written about this particular diorama. Still here more than a decade later. Of course, it's not that long of a period, but well, what can I say? I'm just imagining groups who mean well, just up oil and so forth, desecrating this particular quiet space, this ambient atmospheric space, dominating it. And if you just let yourself go, this is just a diorama in one particularly small part of the museum. But if you actually just let yourself go, it's amazing just how much it can affect you. Can you can't quite see all the detail here because of the lighting, but it really is surprisingly detailed. Ferns and lilies, voles, lesser selling down there, snow hares and Arctic foxes and reindeer. I love that it does go from the deep ice age to the Mesolithic, to the growth of the oak forests, from right to left. I'm at Yellowcraig Beach, SSI. I've not been here in about 11 years. It's one of the first places, or the first place I ever volunteered for nature. I remember being driven here by a man called Dave Wild. He was the primary ranger for the East Lothian Countryside Ranger Service. And it's a strange experience. It's really where everything began. Although the actual reserve is, well, it's about 30 minutes from the house, so it's quite a drive. Strangely as well, it's the site of a story I'm currently writing. I started it in 2022. Dreams Made of Sand, and I've picked it back up again. So I'm actually writing a story that takes place here, and I can't say I've ever really experienced that before. Of course, I've written essays about specific places and then revisited them, like things like this, but to write a rather melancholy story here, it's strange to be here. So what I'm going to do is walk through the woods, which is where some of the father and the son, they walk through the woods and they encounter a fungus called an earth star, which is foreshadowing for a major event or incident in the story. It's a story about creation, a story about natural history, a story about creation and destruction, and remaining positive and even though things will eventually fade, we must keep continuing to create, and all things are creating, all things are undertaking their own paths through life, their own life ways. Part of what the story is about. So we're here. Walk through the woods, get to the dunes, the dune grassland, the beach, the rocky shore. I've been doing quite a lot of research, looking at management plans and so forth to inform my story. And it's just a strange thing, because back then I was just getting into ecology. Around the time when I was volunteering here, I went on a short course. Well, not a short course. I actually left it. It wasn't too great. It was mostly an estate skills course. It wasn't really what I was after. It took going down to England to really find my path. Obviously studying the diploma and then the degree at Sparsholt University. Yellowcraig is a great place to go exploring, with beach, sand dunes, woodland and meadow grasses all in easy reach. That's a good point. It feels like a microcosm of nature to me, even though it's just one beach site. I particularly remember the ranger van as well. It's a shame there isn't a van outside today, but you can see the wee green van. I remember being driven in that from Trinent, where I grew up, to Yellowcraig. Walking through the woods here, my story starts with, well, for now at least, until there is the inevitable change as I rewrite things, but the story starts with the sun disrupting a woodland shelter. The very first foreshadowing, I suppose, of things fading. The father is incredibly tense. He's spending, I should say, his last day on earth, because there's something in the sky coming to end all things. So he's really holding on to what he can, but he just wants everything to be stable, and yet coming to the coast, very dynamic place, a place that is always changing, will obviously conflict with his love of nature. But yes, this woodland, interestingly, is definitely bigger than I remember. This woodland, I believe it's a mixed woodland. We're currently going through the mostly sycamore, ash. There should be an entire section, which I might be bypassing. I'm not entirely sure which way I'm going, but I might be bypassing the Scots Pine plantation, which I remember quite distinctly. It was a place that me and my twin and a friend used to go quite often. We used to find ourselves there because we were doing a project called Cacophonous. It was somewhat of a music project, an ambient music project. So I'm not entirely sure where the pines are, but obviously much prefer the broadleaf woodland. Can be rather depressing in a plantation, obviously. Yes, I remember sometimes after volunteering I would just walk in the woods. I'm sure I'll show all sorts of videos and photos of my time at Yellowcraig. Such a strange place, because it really signifies the last days of being in Scotland. can already see the dunes. I think what I love about the coast is that there's, well, in this site in particular, is that we have the woodland, but you're also treated to, you know that you've got the coast as well, and I think that's something that's kind of been missing as I've lived in the centre of England for quite a while now. It's an absolutely lovely place, of course, the Chiltern Hills, but it can get a bit samey after a while when it's just woodland and just hills. And I have to say, I've never really been that connected to the coast, and yet as the years pass, I remember doing coastal ecology quite often, but and I was never really that interested, and yet as the years pass, I've grown more attached to the fact that I did grow up on the coast. The Firth of Forth was always in sight. Sadly, I've not been able to find an Earth Star. I've not really been able to find one, or a shelter, which would have been poignant. But let's head out into the dunes. Alright, so just come from the woodland, and strangely enough I remember taking a photo around here. I think it was Dave Wild and another volunteer carting a wheelbarrow somewhere. And there in the distance is Phaedra Lighthouse. We've got the pine trees here, and the agglomerates, the low-lying outcrops of rock, painted with moss and lichen. And as I say these things, it is very strange because I'm writing about these features, well, inspired by them. I'm not actually basing the story entirely off of Yellowcraig, but it is fascinating seeing these things. I did get a little bit emotional there. You never really know what you have until you lose it, or you can't make contact with it. Now that I'm here, I'm sure if I lived near Yellowcraig Beach, I would be out here every single day. It really is a lovely place. It's something I'm missing from living in, again, central England. You can actually see, and not really being near any significant hills, I should say as well, you can actually see North Berwick Law in the distance there, which strangely I never went to. For some reason I never went to up North Berwick Law, law being the Scots word for a hill, a conical hill. Yes, I love the freedom of being just out on the dunes here. In the distance, North Berwick Law. So it's got everything. Got some fungi here, and what looks to me like harebell, or the Scottish bluebell. We're in the thick of the grasslands here. Obviously the dunes being consolidated, the nutrient levels increasing. We've got silver weeds and brambles and so forth, hawthorn bushes, sycamore even. I'm keeping an eye out for, I'm not sure it's recorded here, but for kidney vetch. I know that kidney vetch is can be found in this region. It's the sole food plant of the small blue Cupido minimus, which is a butterfly I'm featuring in this story I'm talking about throughout this video. And nice walkway here. The small blue being symbolic of fragility. The brambles are out, the blackberries, Rupus fruticosus species, rose hips as well there. But yes, it's really a rather extensive site, and I remember doing all sorts of volunteering tasks here, searching for wildflowers like frog orchid, to fixing pathways, to litter picking on the beach, things like this. Sea buckthorn burning as well was one of the main ones, an invasive species. Sea buckthorn is good for birds, but it overly consolidates the dunes. I believe that's a campion of sorts. I can't quite remember what type. Last time I came here I had not studied ecology at all really, apart from kind of general enthusiasm for the subject. But it's also strange in that I've also forgotten a lot of species as well. Just the way of things. I've got the whole day here, but I don't want to miss out anything. You can see these large Scots pines here. I could go over in that direction, but I'm just going to follow the way downward, again moving toward the Law. Ash tree there, with the ash keys on. There's something so freeing about just having an entire day to be out in the dunes like this. So obviously enthusiastically discussing wildlife and memories, but part of my story relates to something shining in the sky like a second sun. The hand. It's quite it's strange being in a place like this, knowing that I'm writing the story, especially when it gets quiet like this, when the wind stops. So moving towards North Berwick Law, it does turn towards a golf course, so I will turn round now to get to the dunes and the beach. So this is sea buckthorn. You can see the bright orange berries here. It's an invasive species. What I remember most about sea buckthorn is burning it well over into the dunes, but it does grow here back before the dunes really begin. But I remember most of all watching a programme, I think it was called Wild Food, with Ray Mears and Gordon Hillman. And in one episode they harvested some of the berries, the fruits of sea buckthorn, and tasted some of them. I remember I've met Ray Mears briefly, and Gordon Hillman, who has now passed away, something of a hero of mine. And here we are, as the wind dies down and the sun is out. think I was missing the coast, how dynamic and fresh and open it is. And so, back there was Phaedra Island. I'm not entirely sure what the islands are called on the left side of the screen here, but you can see the Bass Rock. Not quite as white as it is in some photos, but you can see Bass Rock over there. A massive colony of gannets, northern gannets, and obviously North Berwick Law as well on the right hand side. I'm just remembering that I think mostly I volunteered not in this direction but back the way. More familiar with back the way, I think, especially the rocky shore all the way back in that direction. Plenty of time to explore. I'm going to sit for a while and look at Bass Rock through my binoculars. This would appear to be the carcass of a seal, perhaps. I've seen a lot of carrion before, of course, in my time, working with carrion beetles. Seen deer disemboweled by dogs in some country parks, but I've never seen a seal carcass before. I'm surprised it hasn't been moved. I wasn't entirely sure. I thought it was just some kind of debris until I got closer and seen the perforations and the bones and the fur. Of the ancestors. Of course, the Mesolithic people used to frequent the coast. They were the people of the coast. I guess part of my heritage growing up right next to all of this. And I think I'm going to miss this when I go back home, to be honest. I'm almost, in certain respects, I'm almost regretting that I came here. Well, here we are. Apologies for the wind. That's Phaedra Island over there. Seem to be the only one landing on these rocks. So I've just slowly been making my way along the west of the dunes to the left. I was at one point, the rocky shore that I was on was actually not this section here. I believe it was further back along that way, and then you can get a good view of Phaedra and the lighthouse on the hill there, and then the archway, which I'll be looking through with my binoculars in a moment, and then the gap, and then the isthmus. symbolism there. It is eventually destroyed, not by the hand in the sky, but by a figure running over it. But the father, after finding a moment of release, experiencing a moment of release, he knows that things must come to an end, but that's no reason to stop creating. So he creates a butterfly with his son as the hand comes to end all life. But he continues to create. I don't actually remember this part much at all. I'm sure I've been here before, but it's been 12 years since I last came here, so I don't remember this. But it looks like we'll get a very good view of the beach. Going all the way up here. This might actually be the volcanic plug, which is the source of much of the geology around here. In fact, it is strange to say, I'd not actually been here before. This is a perfect spot to end the trip on. So another case of places that I'm visiting that I never really knew about at the time. Obviously, the Highlands captured my attention most of all. So once you've been to the Trossachs in the Highlands, you don't necessarily look around your area, but I'm currently at Tantallon Castle, or Tantallon, which sounds a bit more weighty, a bit more reverent. So we're to Dirleton Castle, and today is Tantallon and Auldhame, a nice Scottish sounding name, Auldhame, or Auldhame. So this is a coastal castle, home to the Douglases, built in the 1300s. It's rather striking. You'll actually be able to see, I believe, Bass Rock, which I saw at Yellowcraig, but I'm going to be seeing up close. What I find fascinating is just the fact that this has always been here. I've never visited, and just over there you can see Berwick Law. Another hill that I'm sure I've not visited, hoping to go to the top. It's much bigger than I remember. And here we are, first view of Bass Rock. Closer than I've ever seen it. This is reminding me of all sorts of strongholds, castles, keeps, various settlements in Azeroth, Arda, even books like the Worm Ouroboros. Just all sorts of I mean, this place is incredible. Such inspiration for illustrations, and I can imagine my twin isn't here, but he'll know what I mean. Hello everyone, I'm at Seacliff, which is very near Auldhame Castle. I've not been to Auldhame yet, but another fantastic coastal landscape. I'm definitely, as I say, I'm definitely growing more and more attached to the coast, and the things that I learned from my studies are coming back in terms of coastal ecology and geology and so forth. It's just such a varied and dynamic landscape. So much to see. Different smells. These formations here, different stacks and whatnot. And so after I've gone to see Bass Rock again, and just around the corner Tantallon Castle, we'll be heading into the woods to see the ruins of Auldhame Castle. Well, if ever there was an architectural element that aligns with Thitherword and my greater interest in thresholds and portals and whatnot, the archway or gate at Auldhame. I always like to mark these types of places. Many passageways and archways that I've seen on my travels, and this is another one. But of course it's more meaningful because it belongs to where I belong. Alright, so this is really, for me, the main part of the trip. I'm at Traprain Law, which, again, is a recurring theme in this video. It's strange that I've never been here before. I lived in Scotland for 20 years, and I remember I'd even known about this vaguely at the time. So we're in Haddington, just maybe outside of Haddington, maybe about a 20-minute drive from Trinent, and I've been interested in prehistory and ancient history since maybe 2010 or so, 2009, 2010. And I vaguely heard about this, but I couldn't drive at the time, and well, there's a whole lot of reasons which I won't get into, but I just never visited Traprain Law before, and this is such a significant site. I'll try and talk more about the history and all the detail later on, but suffice it to say for now, it's a great hill fort. It has history spanning back to the Bronze Age, and most interestingly for me, it's the site of the Iron Age Fotodini tribe, which is strange to think I would have been a part of in the Iron Age. Brythonic tribe, the Fotodini, who were the ancestors of the Gododin tribe. And you can see some of the history here. Traprain Law is one of the most important archaeological sites of Scotland, with a wonderfully rich and diverse heritage spanning over 6,000 years. It says here that the Law is thought to have been a major centre by the time of the Roman invasion. And there are of course medieval burials as well, and buildings occupying the Law. And there's a legend relating to King Loth, who gave his name to the Lothians. And I come from East Lothian. And there's in fact a stone, King Loth stone, which I'm hoping to see as well. So it's curious, somewhat saddening as well, that I've never been here before. I think the Highlands just gripped me so much that I just never focused on areas like this before, but today is the main day. I think I'm going to spend quite a lot of time at Traprain Law, and I'm going to record an ecocentric testimony for the ecological citizen as well, hopefully, on the hill. And then we will be heading over to that hill there, which is North Berwick Law. So I think it's a case of, another case of, if I lived here, or very near here, I'd probably be scaling this hill most days, sitting on the rocky outcrops and whatnot. You can see in the distance there the Pentland Hills, North Berwick Law, and to the right, the Bass Rock. A sight to behold. Wow. Grazing ponies. And here's the summit. And finally, the last event or activity of the day, North Berwick Law. North Berwick Law being a volcanic plug related to the Bass Rock, and where we just went, Traprain Law. So it'll be interesting going up to the summit. Quite high. I guess the height is accentuated because of the conical shape of the hill, but the looks like there's quite a lot of nice wildlife to see here. Kestrels, herons, red admirals, damselflies, fungus, badger. Some illustrations here. History of the geology of the rocks. There's mentions of Phaedra again. And that whalebone there, I believe there used to be an original real whalebone, whale's jawbone, on top of the hill, but it's now fiberglass, I think. Kind of ruins the authenticity and the effect of it, but should be quite striking nonetheless. So this is the last activity of the day, last activity of the trip, North Berwick Law. So the Pentland Hills over there, and as we come to the first viewpoint, there is in the distance Phaedra Lighthouse and one of the islands I can't quite remember the name of, but just great to see Yellowcraig from the distance over there. So this really does feel like the perfect place to end the trip. This is a very encapsulatory view. The Pentland Hills, Yellowcraig Beach and its many islands, the Bass Rock, and just over there, I'm not sure if you can see it, the reddish castle, Tantallon Castle. So really captures everything. So to end the trip, I'm actually at the Grove in Musselburgh, which is a woodland and the river-esque. It's a walk that I mentioned in one of my videos. I think it might have been the Turning Troves Trees and Forests video. A woodland that I used to come to fairly often. For me at the time it felt like this place of revelation. It's really just a strip of woodland with willows and Himalayan balsam and so forth. And near a factory where my dad used to work, we used to have to get the bus in. But this might sound like I'm making this up, but I've been looking at the map on this journey through East Lothian and related areas, and I can't say I'm quite surprised. I found a woodland very near where I live in Tranent called Butterdine Wood a few days ago, and I just kept looking at it thinking, how did I miss this? How did I not go to Butterdine Wood? It's a National Trust wood, it's fairly substantial. I've somehow never seen it before. So I always had to come here. This is my, I think my most accessible nature area, green space. And yet it's really quite far away, getting the bus in to come here. Remember the river sitting here, beside the river. The willow trees. It is quite a nice place once you get past the graffitied walls and the factory. I remember taking my binoculars and field guides and things like this. think the earliest I can remember was around 2011. I used to come here as a kid, but when I was actually cognizant of it and cognizant of nature, I came here around 2011.